So in the second video for 8.4, we're going to continue talking about trig functions like sine, cosine, and tangent. But for this video, you have to have a calculator. You have to find your sine, cosine, and tangent buttons on your calculator. If you can't find them, ask in class so that way we can show you where they're at. You might, based on the settings on your calculator, might be getting something different than what I'm putting on the answers. If you are, be sure to show me your calculator in class so we can talk about it. So what I want you to do is to type in sine of 15. What happens when we take the sine of a 15-degree angle? You're going to get a decimal, 0.2588. Check and see that your calculator is getting that as well. It's not that your calculator doesn't know what it's doing, it's just in a different format. Cosine of 51, same thing, type in cosine 51, you get 0.6293. Now, to find the trig functions, some of them have sine, cosine, tangent just right out in the open. Sometimes you have to look for the word trig above one of the buttons, and then you get a menu with the different trig functions. So, let's start solving equations. I want to take sine of 28 equals opposite over hypotenuse, or x over 50. Sine of 28 is 0.46947, and it keeps going on and on forever. I'm not going to worry about that part right now, but x over 50, and I'm not going to clear it in my calculator. I'm going to leave what's in the calculator and take that and multiply it by 50, so that way I'm more accurate, and I won't round until the end, and I get x is 23.47. And it says round to the nearest tenth, so let's actually follow the directions. That rounds up to 23.5. So over here, tangent of 36, if I type in tangent of 36, I get 0.7265 equals 3600 over x. Now up here I was able to just multiply by 50 and those canceled out. Down here I'm not, so I'm going to make this over 1. I'm going to cross multiply. 3600 equals 0.7265, that long non-repeating decimal, equals x, or times x, and then I'm going to divide by that decimal. When I divide that on both sides, try not to clear this in your calculator. Most of the calculators have an answer feature where you can just divide by the previous answer. Use that so you're more accurate, and you get that x is 4,954.97, so we have to round up to 4,955.0. You don't have to write the 0.0, but I just did anyway. So let's go ahead and set up an equation now. If you remember from the previous video, we had SOHCAHTOA, and that was sine, cosine, and tangent. O was opposite, A was adjacent, H was hypotenuse. So 41 is touching x and 32. That means we're using cosine. So the cosine of 41 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And the cosine of 41 is 0.7547, and it keeps going on forever, x over 32. You could think of this as cross-multiplying every single time. Multiply that number in your calculator by 32. X is 24.15, which rounds up to 24.2. So we need to set up two equations, one for x, one for y. We have SOHCAHTOA. Let's do x first. 4 is opposite, x is adjacent, opposite and adjacent is tangent. So the tangent of 37 is the opposite side over the adjacent side. When we go to solve, tangent of 37 is 0.7536. We're going to make that over 1. I'm going to cross multiply. 0.7536x equals 4. So I take 4 and I divide by that decimal. I get that x is 5.3. Now to find y, it's the hypotenuse, so I know I'm using sine or cosine because those have hypotenuse. I'm going to use 4 instead of the decimal for x because that way then it's going to be more accurate. So I'm going to use the opposite side, which means I'm using sine. So sine of 37 equals 4, opposite over hypotenuse, 4 over y. So sine of 37 is 0.6018, and it keeps going on forever. We're going to cross multiply again. So 0.6018 y equals 4. And I'm going to divide 4 by the answer that I got previously. And y is 6.6. Let's take a look at this next one. An airplane is going up, inclining, for 2,500 kilometers at 15.7 degrees. What is the altitude of the airplane to the nearest kilometer? So, let me draw a triangle. Let me get a triangle up here. Wrong triangle. So, we have an airplane going up at 15.7 degrees. It's going up for 2,500 kilometers. I'm going to read that as it traveled that many kilometers in a straight line. And I want to find the altitude. So opposite over hypotenuse is sine. So the sine of 15.7 equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. And the sine of 15.7 is 0.2706. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2,500. And I get that the altitude is 676.5 kilometers. So, this happened a couple years ago. Nick Walenda walked a tightrope from one building in Chicago to another, and he did it without any, harness or anything. And then he actually walked across from one marina tower to the other, blindfolded. So I actually need to move this. I have those there. So the questions I want to ask is, how far apart were the buildings? And how long was the tightrope? So I want to find this and this, x and y. And I know that Marina Tower was 588 feet tall and the Leo Burnett building was 671 feet tall. So how are those going to help me? Well, if you think about the two buildings, here's one building, here's another. This one is 588 feet tall, this one is 671, and the tightrope is at this angle. This height here, which I know I'm calling x again, but this height is the difference between those two. So 671 minus 588 means that this height is actually 83 feet. We know it's at a 15-degree angle, so I can find both of these. I'm going to set up tangent. Tangent of 15 is the opposite side over the adjacent side. And then I'm going to set up sine, because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So, tangent of 15, I'm going to cross multiply. So 0.268 equal 268y equals 83. And I'm going to take 83 and divide by that number. And I get that y, the distance between the two buildings is 309.76 feet, and this was across the Chicago River, so 300 feet does make sense. Over here, sine of 15, and then I'm going to cross multiply again, 0.2588, x equals 83. I'm going to take 83 and divide by that answer again. 83 divided by the 0.2588, and I get that the length of the tightrope was 320.7 feet. So he walked 320 feet across the Chicago River that was only 309 feet because he was going uphill.